you can ask any questions, and we'll go for it with that, if that's okay.
That is okay, but where's Kim? Is he with you?
I'm right here. Can you see me?
I can. Okay, great. Okay, great.
No, that's good enough. I'll fix it.
Okay, I'm gonna mute everyone except Kim and Marcie, so you guys go ahead and I'm recording, and then we'll put it on YouTube later.
Oh, scary thought. We our mission started with well, I think it started a long time ago, because we knew that Drew was our youngest, and we told him that when he got ready to send his papers in, that we were sending ours in too. And then he started the countdown. He started saying, you know, so Mom, every general conference he'd say, so Mom, you got 2 more years, and you've got 1.5 years, and he was counting it down for me. I think in my mind it was a little righteous manipulation, but man, it came quick. That time went by really fast. We had so when we sent our papers in, I was still working. I was working as a title clerk for a car dealership, and we were still actively involved in a lot of things. I was Young Women's president, and we just kind of filled our papers out. It was when we did papers, and so we filled our papers out at different times and dropped them at the bishop's office at different times. And when we got our I was at Young Women's one night, and the stake president asked me to come in, and I said, is something wrong? And he said, yes. He said, you've got you put down on your mission papers that you want to go on a foreign mission and want to speak a foreign language. And I said, yeah. And he said, well, your husband put down that he does not want to go on a foreign mission and does not want to learn a foreign language. And he said, now, assuming that you are going to be companions, and he said, you're probably going to the same mission, and more than likely will be companions. He said, what are we doing here? And I said, change Kim's. And he's a lawyer, and he said, really? And I said, no, change mine. So they went in, no foreign mission, no foreign language. And then when our call came, I got a call from the lady that runs the mission. I don't know what it's called, mission center, where they decide. And she said, where you're going? And she said, she called me and said, I have some questions for you. And I said, okay. And she said, she said, are you really 48, I think is how old I was. And I said, yeah. And she goes, now you understand that all your children have to be out of the home. And I said, they are. We just put our last one in the MTC. And she said, and you understand that you have to pay for this mission yourself? And I said, yes, I understand that. And she said, and you can't work. And I said, I understand it. She said, okay. And then she asked me if I had any questions for her. And I said, I want to know how these calls come down. And she said, well, with senior couples, she says it's a little different, because she said, we ask the mission presidents to only send in exactly what they can't live without, as far as a couple missionaries. And she said, and we bill about half those. And so she said, so every event will issue a mission call for you. She said, CES, family history, office couples, proselyting, temple, all those different areas, welfare. And she said, and then she said, on Friday, she said, a member of the Quorum of the 12 will come in, and he will either pick one of those or throw them all out and issue his own. And I said, how often does that happen? And she said, a lot. And I said, okay. So she said, and then we'll send all your papers out on Tuesday or Monday. And she said, you'll have your mission call on Wednesday. And so we went to the mailbox and there wasn't anything there. And so I called her and said, hey, do you remember me? And she said, yes. And I said, so what's going on? We didn't get our call. And she said, well, let me look. And I could hear the computer going. And then she said, well, she goes, you know, those options I told you about? And I said, yeah. And she said, well, she said, there's another option. She said, the member of the Quorum of the 12 comes in and looks at all those mission calls and then says, none of these are right, and sends everybody back and they start over. And she goes, and that's what happened to you. And I said, well, that kind of sounds like a rejection. And she said, no, she said, they just, none of them were right. And so the next Wednesday, we pull up to the mailbox and reach in, and there's a call or a paper. There's a paper from the mission office, and it's, and so I said to Kim, I said, do you want to wait and get the kids together? And he said, no. And I said, well, do you want to wait until we get home? And he said, no. He said, I want to know where we're going. And so I opened it up, and the first thing on the top was senior missionary insurance papers. And then the next one was passport papers. And Kim was getting really irritated at me because he said, Marcie, I just want to know where we're going. Quit messing around. And I said, okay. And then I said, Kenya, Nairobi. And he said, Marcie, I told you to quit messing around and tell me where we're going. And I said, that's it. And he got really, really quiet for about a half hour. I called my mother. She's a Southern lady. I was born in Georgia. She's a Southern lady. And I called my mom. I said, we got our mission call. And she said, where are you going? Now my mom's kind of this, she's prejudiced. She's a prejudiced lady from being in the South. And she said, where are you going? And I said, Kenya. And she said, you're turning it down, right? And I said, no, I'm not. I said, I'll call you later and talk to you. So we, anyway, so I think that we got ready to go. Mission president called us, told us where we were going, of course, better than it was, told us we were going to the mountains of the Rift Valley. It was 70 degrees. It stayed within 10 degrees of 70 degrees day and night, summer and winter. And that we were, how much we were gonna love it. When we got there after a 30, then he wanted to move us up. He wanted to move our date up. And so we were supposed to go just after Thanksgiving. We ended up leaving the day after Halloween. So this is kind of interesting that this would fall on that anniversary for us. And Halloween that week was on a Sunday. So we went to the MTC on Monday. The one thing that there was just such a push because he was trying to get our visas and everything in line. We didn't have passports. We had to get all that. It was just a real push till we got there. I remember getting off the plane in Kenya after a 30-hour plane ride, and remember the one thing that shocked me, which was really I guess it shouldn't have, but it did, because I had seen, I'd seen blacks in the United States, but I was shocked at how black they were. They were just so completely, just really, they're diluted here when they come. They're not near as dark here as they are there. We found out really fast that when we took pictures of them, they loved us to take pictures of them because they didn't have cameras. And so when we take pictures, I found out really fast that I had to put them in the sunlight to take the picture, because if I had them in the shade or inside a building, you could not see anything. You couldn't see their features or anything else.
Come out like the black cat eating licorice in a coal bin at midnight.
Yeah, they were pretty dark. We went up to the first thing we were there for a couple of days, and then they sent us up with a couple that was in what we called Kitali, which was the furthest north of any of the missions. We went up with them. The first thing I realized when we got there was that there was just trash everywhere. I mean, just piled up on the side of the roads. It was really, really dirty. And then as we're driving up to Kitali with this other couple that lives up there, we came to a guard, a police officer standing and he was waving us down, and we went to stop, and the guy that was with us said, "Don't stop, just keep going." And I said, "Well, he's a cop." And he said, "Just keep going. Just keep going." He said, "If you start pulling over for them, they'll want money every time that you pull over, and you'll carry that with you your entire mission." So we just drove. It was hard for me. We just drove right past the cop and waved at him, and he kind of gave us a funny look and then waved at us.
I was loving it. I was driving and I loved it.
We did have it has a lot of English influences there. So they were speaking English, but they were speaking. It had a Swahili English accent. And I remember the first night we were there, I said to Kim, "Did you understand anything that anybody said to us today?" And he said, "Not a word." It was really hard to understand them. And then, within a month you could understand them perfectly. And I was like, I don't know why I thought this was so hard. And then one day I had talked to Wendy and I said, "Here, talk to one of these people on the phone." And in a minute, she listened for a second, and then she said to me, "Mom, I can't understand a word they said." I'm like, "Oh, sorry." So we had some interesting challenges, interesting experiences. I remember one time we were having a sacrament meeting, and the monkey came in the window right by the sacrament table and stole the sacrament bread right off the table. We had to move the sacrament to the end of the meeting and had to go get some bread and bring it back so that we could have the sacrament because the monkey stole it. We had a lot of different things as far as members that were stealing money and or helping themselves to the budget and to the tithing. And we had, I don't know how many, we had probably 12 excommunications like the first couple of months we were there. One day I called the mission president. I was in tears, and I said to him, I came on this mission. I'm sorry. I said, I came on this mission to bring people into the church, not to kick them out. And he said, well, he said, we cannot bring new members into a corrupt organization. So he said, we clean now and we baptize later, which is exactly what happened. The mission president, I asked him, I said, what would you like us to do up there? What's the most important thing, or the one thing that we could do that would be of the most help to you? And he said, I need you to clean up the records. He said, they've not been done for so long. We don't know where any of these people are or where they live. And he said, if you could do that. So I sat down, went to my oldest people that I could find in each branch. And there were, five branches? Six branches. Anyway, I went to the oldest people I could find, oldest members I could find in each branch. And we started going through the list of members, and I'm saying, what happened to this person? And I was like, oh, they died, and this one moved. And so we went down and we sent all the records back to Nairobi. that were no longer there or no longer living, or whatever the circumstances were. And we went down to a meeting in Nairobi just after that, and the mission president said, between the excommunications and cleaning the records, he said the Andersons have the entire mission in negative numbers for the beginning of the year. So we were, but that's what he wanted. So that's what we did. We had and it was beautiful. That whole area was just absolutely gorgeous. It was tropical rainforest. It was all kinds of trees and animals, and you'd be driving down the road and see giraffes kind of wandering out across the field, and that was really fun. I had been there one time long enough that I wasn't afraid anymore. I should have been, but I wasn't. And there was some grass moving, and I got out of the car with my camera, and I started following it because I could tell it was kind of big, and I wanted to see. Anyway, as I was coming up on this where the grass was moving, this big old leopard jumped up on this log and looked back over his shoulder at me and gave me a really nice little growl, telling me to back away. And I had heard, everybody had told us, they said, if you get in trouble with those animals, do not turn your back on them. You keep facing them, then you just kind of start backing up, but you keep facing them, because if you turn your back on them, they'll come after you. So I just faced him and started wandering back, stepping backwards, real careful that I didn't trip over anything and fall. When I got back, I got in a little trouble from my husband, who was like, "Why did you do that?" Anyway, that was fun. We were in a wreck while we were there. We got rear-ended with the elders. The elders were with us. We got rear-ended by someone, and I was trying to. There's a thing in the glove compartment of the car that says, from the church, that says, "Do not accept responsibility for an accident." And I thought that was kind of interesting. We weren't responsible anyway, but the guy was drunk and he just ran into us. And so we're sitting there, and I suddenly realized that I'm not in Kansas anymore, because I didn't know how to get a police officer on the phone. You don't dial 911 over there. And so I finally went to got one of the members, and he said, let me go find you a police officer. So he left on his bicycle, and a little bit he came back and he said, they need money to come for transport. So they need money to come to the accident. And I said, okay. So we gave him some money.
Like 50 cents, but no dollar.
Yeah. And he went back, and then we waited and waited, and nobody showed up. And finally I sent him back again. And I said, can you find out what's happening? And he calls and says, or came back and said, he said they used the money to buy a soda for everyone, and they're still at the police station. And so I called the mission president and told him what was going on. I said, well, what do you want us to do? And he said, you've waited long enough. It was like 3 hours. And he said, you've waited long enough. He said, just, So I took my camera out and I shot pictures of the guy that was drunk, and he was laid out across the hood of his car. And I took pictures of our car and his car and all this stuff. And then we went to the police station in Kitale, and I went in, and they were all still there. All the policemen were still there. And I said, you didn't come? And he said, well, we were going to. And I said, so anyway, I said, well, here's pictures. Here's pictures of the guy that hit us. Here's pictures of all the, the cars. Here's pictures of the skid marks. Here's pictures and he looked at me and he said, were you a police officer in the United States? And I said, no, but my dad was. And he said, oh. And so anyway, then I went out and sat in the car while Kim was still there, because I did 3 hours and I had to go to the bathroom. So I went out and sat in the car, in a little bit, Kim came out with a piece of paper, and the paper said, he said, well, they made me sign this paper so we could drive the car. And I said, what? I said, there's cars running around here with no doors on them and no hoods, and why would they want you to sign a paper? And he handed me the paper, and I looked at it, and right there it said I accept responsibility for the accident, and Kim had signed it just underneath and and I was like, oh. So I went back into the police station, and there was not a soul around, not anybody anywhere. And so I walked into the office where we had been, and the carbon copy of that paper that Kim signed was laying on the desk. So I just picked it up and dropped it into my purse and walked back out to the car. And as I was walking down the hallway, the police chief came, and he said, do you need, or he said, can I help you with something? And I said, no. I said, I have everything I need, and walked out and got in the car. And the next day, the mission president called and wanted to know how everything was and how it went. And I told him, I said, yeah. And I went back in, and that paper was laying on the desk. And he's a retired military. And so the minute I told him that the paper was laying on the desk, and before I could even say anything, he just said to me, he said, Sister Anders, there's some things I just don't need to hear. And he hung up on me. And so I just, Kim said to me, he said, Marcie, what if they have you on camera? What if they have you on camera stealing that government document? And I said, Kim, they don't have bathrooms. They're not going to have a camera that watches me steal something. And we didn't hear back from them in any way. We had, so how many excommunications do we have altogether? Do you remember?
16, wasn't there?
16. I think we had 16 excommunications. And after that, we had 90. What did we have?
97.
97 baptisms afterwards. Had just some really, really good experiences. The people that, for them, the Kenyan people, the Bible is new scriptures. They didn't even hear about it until a generation ago. And so when you introduce the Book of Mormon to them, they are so completely, they said it has the same, their phrase was, the Book of Mormon has the same voice. It has the same voice as the Bible. And there was no doubt in their mind that it was true. And one of them one day said to me, they said, someday there will be a record of Africa that will emerge also. And they thought that was pretty cool. But they didn't have any trouble accepting the Book of Mormon. And we had a man that was a retired government official. He was considered to be pretty high up in the government, and his family had all been baptized one at a time, and he had not. And one day we said to him, was it Reuben? No, what was his name? I can't remember his name. Anyway, we said to him, are you reading the Book of Mormon? And he said no. And so the missionaries, the young elders, were with us, and one of them really had this huge testimony in the Book of Mormon. And he said, you have to read the Book of Mormon. You have to read it to gain a testimony. And he said that, so that Joseph Smith was a prophet. And he said, oh, Joseph Smith is a prophet. And we asked him, he said, I know he is. And I said, well, how do you know that? And he said, I have been reading the Doctrine and Covenants. And he said that Joseph Smith was an inspired man. He said the way he had the church laid out. And so it was interesting because that had caught his, we usually gave him a Book of Mormon when we, at our appointments, and we didn't with him because we had run out. And so we had given him a triple And he started with the Doctrine and Covenants and gained his testimony of Joseph Smith through that, which was a really, really fun experience for us. We learned to ask better questions as far as when we were, because they would read and enjoyed every part of it. We called a branch president in one area that was another government official that was retired, and he had really thick glasses, had a hard time seeing. And when he was called to be the branch president, we drove by one day. That was Reuben, yeah. And we drove by, and Reuben was sitting out on his front porch with his wife, Elizabeth, and she was reading the handbook to him. And as they would go through the handbook, and then you see her read something, and then you'd see her finger come up, and she'd just shake her finger at him, and then they go back. And we were gone all day long, and when we came back, they were still sitting in the exact same place with her still reading to him. And when we went to talk to him, they had read through the entire handbook several times. And she said, there's a lot of things that these branch presidents have not done and are not doing, and we're going to do it right. It was just he was a great leader in that area.
We went there every week to his house. He had a nice big brick house, and we went there every week for the missionary lessons, and he had a crowd.
And he said, we will take this very slow. He said, we will only baptize 4 people every week. And he said, I'll make sure that they're very good people. And he said, we'll take this very slow and baptize 4 a week. And I was like, that's slow. Really amazing man. His branch grew, and it was really, really great.
And he made him the branch president.
So I don't know what else you want to hear, or if anybody has any questions.
I think I heard stories.
No questions.
I think I heard stories of you guys driving around, going off the roads and the trails and the game parks, and having some cool experiences like that, seeing animals.
Yes.
Yeah, we did. We went to we were able to go to most of the game parks. The mission president let us have that freedom, and we usually took the elders with us. We went to Nakuru, we went to Masai Mara. We went quite a few places and took the elders with us. I know when Jim and Marie were there, we went to, I think we went to, did we go to Masai Mara? Anyway, we went down. And Marie hiked part of Kilimanjaro while we were there. Kilimanjaro was, except for just the very base of it, on one spot, was outside of our mission boundaries, so we didn't go with her. There's part of me that kind of wishes we had, but we were trying to behave. We're trying to do what we should. I remember, animals. When I got a picture of the back of our little SUV open, and we took a picture of this big old lion standing right outside the SUV, and that got back to the mission president. He wasn't very happy that we were. One day we were out and we found some ostrich eggs. There was a nest there, and the ostriches and the elders got over there, and I said, you guys put those eggs back and get away from there. I said, that ostrich mama comes back and she'll rip you to pieces, So they put them back. But yeah, we had a lot of fun in the game parks. It was a nice way to get the elders, to kind of give them a day off, and they couldn't go on their own, but the mission president would let them go with us. So we could take them and give them a little break from the work. our area was a bicycle area for them, and so they had just worked mainly Katali, because the other couple that was there had not worked with them, and so we started taking them out so that we would go to a different ranch like every day, and so we would they got to know everybody, and it was really good for them. A couple of the elders had said, they said, that was the high point of their mission was to come to Katali. He said the mission president said nobody wanted to go to Katali until we were up there, and then everybody wanted to go to Katali because it became a fun place and lots of baptisms, and I had a lot of really cool experiences. I had a guy walk up to me one day. We were paying our power bill, and this guy walked right up to my car, and he said, "You have something for me." And I had been there long enough. I was a little jaded, and I thought he was wanting money. And I said, "No, I don't." And he said, yes, you do have something for me. And he said, I kind of said, "Well, what?" And he said, "I had a dream last night that you would be here today at this time, and that you would have a message for me." And so we gave him a Book of Mormon and set some time up with the elders to come see him. And the problem was that he had a lot of money. He had several wives, and so he was not eligible to be baptized, and he couldn't. But he was willing to give up one of the wives. He said he was, and then it never happened. So.
Tell about the guy that said that he had a dream and he saw us and we were behind the guy that was preaching.
Oh, they're a very visionary people. They have dreams, and they have. One day, this lady, I was talking to her, and she was packing to go somewhere, and I said to her, "Where are you going?" And she said, "My mother died. I'm going up country for the funeral." And some of these poor people, they don't know their parents even died for 6 or 8 months later, and so I said to her, "Well, did someone let you know?" And she said, "Yes." She said, "My mother died." And I said, "I understand that." And she said, "My mother came to me in a dream last night, told me she had died, and that I needed to go up country for the funeral." And I said, and so she went up to the funeral, came back, and I still kind of had my doubts a little bit. And I said, when she got back, I said, "So, did everything go okay?" And she looked at me and kind of laughed, and she said, "Sister Andress, I told you my mother died, and that she left me a message in my dream." And then she looked at me and she goes, "Do you not speak to your mother?" And I said, I do, but not like that, And I realized that at some point there that our lives get so busy and so complicated and so loud, and so that we miss out on some of those little things that they've learned to live with. They get messages from the other side. The one that Kim was telling you about was this man that lived in Nairobi, and he was up in Katali, and he said, "I had a dream." And he said, in this dream, he said, this preacher was preaching to us, and he said he was loud and he was preaching, and he said, and you were standing behind him, and he said, I walked away from him to hear what you were saying. And he said, and then he said, I turned around I knew it was true, and I turned around to find my family and my friends, and they were all gone. And he said, at that point, he said, I knew that I was going to have to embrace this gospel, that I was going to have to leave my family and friends behind. And we turned him over to somebody in Nairobi, and I didn't ever hear how that went, but very, very intuitive people, very, very open to the truth, and very, one of the things that was huge for them is they're so into family, and family is so important to them. I mean, when they talk about reciting their family history and their ancestors, and they do all of that. And he was they the family's, it's just really, really important, the family name. And so we were talking to oh, I forgot what I was going to say. Anyway, we were talking about I know, when we were talking about baptism for the dead, and that was just huge to them, because everybody before us had told them that their ancestors, because they never heard about Christianity, that they were lost. They were never going to see them again, and they were just lost. And we talked about baptisms for the dead, and that they could actually perform that for their ancestors. They were so excited that was a possibility. Anything else? I don't know how long you want me to take.
Didn't you have an experience with the the little primary girls passing the sacrament? Is that, I seem to remember hearing a little bit about that.
Is that the one where they called me on the carpet because they didn't know the primary song?
I don't think so. Didn't they? So, and I could be remembering this wrong, but I thought that you had showed up at some little branch and the primary girls were passing the sacrament. Is that a real thing that I'm remembering?
Yeah. Well, what had happened? It wasn't our area. It was a different area, and they had actually taken pictures of the women passing sacrament in the and they had sent it in, and it made it all the way to the ensign. They had a picture of these women passing sacrament.
In the ensign.
Yeah, in the ensign. And when it was hard to tell what it was unless you knew. And then
Women's heads are all shaved, so they're all bald, so you can't tell a man from a woman half the time.
And anyway, what they did, and when it was down in a little area to the south of us, and so the elders, went there and said, that the women, that you said that women cannot pass the sacrament. That's a priesthood calling. It's not for the women. And they came back, and the next week they went back down and they were passing the sacrament again. And the elders said, I thought we told you that. Oh, and the branch president said, oh no, it's okay because we ordained them. So they thought that they'd fixed the problem. Several times they would say things like they didn't quite catch that whole vision. They were we were at some lessons, and they were going to baptize this one family, and the elders said to them, who would you like to baptize you? And they said, Sister Andress. And the elders said, no, that Sister Andress can't do that. It has to be. And they went through the whole priesthood thing and all that, the authority and all that again. And then they finished up and said, now who would you like to baptize you? And they said, Sister Andress. And we had a hard time, getting them to understand that it wasn't okay that they passed the sacrament. It wasn't okay that they I couldn't baptize them.
One branch president quit, and I asked who they wanted to be the branch president, and the women all said, Sister Andress.
Yeah, it was kind of an interesting little place.
Does Kim have any stories he wants to tell?
Well, my first one that would kind of shock me is when we were going to our area, the other couple was taking us to the area. We were going down the road, and the road was only wide enough for one car, and on the bottom side of the road where the water would run over, it had a 3-foot drop off the edge of the pavement. So just nothing there. So we were going down the road, and all of a sudden the whole street, the whole lane was filled up with black people out there, all just milling around. And it was this little government pickup that a canvas top over the back, and there's a guy with a machine gun standing in the back of it, and they come down the hill with a wheelbarrow, and this lady in a wheelbarrow. One of the military guys was pushing a wheelbarrow down the hill, and there's this lady laying in it, and he comes down to load it in the truck, and we were right behind the truck. We had to stop, and he bumped into the door, which was Marcie's door, because the steering wheel was on the right side, and so her window was down, and she looked down at the wheelbarrow, and she says, "That lady's dead." And I said, "Dead?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "How can you tell?" She says, "No color." I says, "Well, how can you tell from that?"
She actually had had a big old cut across her forehead that
She had a
wasn't
big bandana wrapped around her head.
it wasn't bleeding. She was already dead. But her husband, I guess, and the one guy said that she was a bad wife, and her husband beat her, and he whacked her over the head with a machete and killed her. And I said, "Can he do that?" And he said, "Oh yeah, she's his property. He can do whatever he wants."
He paid dowry for her, and it's his wife. If she's not a good wife, he can do what he wants.
So they were pretty. There were a couple times when a couple of the ladies came to church pretty beat up, and one day I got a little mad, and I said to one of the ladies, I said, who does all the work in your family, you or him? And she said, "I do." And I said, "Who is stronger, you or him?" And she said, "I am." And I said, "Hit him back." And Kim was like, no, don't start telling him to hit. And then about a week later, he got up in sacrament meeting and told the men that if they hit their wives, he was personally going to excommunicate them for that. So we hopefully we taught him a little bit.
Marcie, at the beginning, you said you were going to tell a favorite story. Did you tell it?
Oh, I can't remember which one I was going to tell you. There were so many. I mean, every day, when we first got there, I got so frustrated because it was just like every single day it was something completely different and new, and
I got up one morning. He says, "Do you think we'll see anything in the rest of our mission that tops as bizarre as this was, what we saw today?" And she says, "I don't know." And so she says, "I'm going to start writing a paper about every one of them, and put in a little cover and call it, 'You might be in Kenya if.'"
And there were a whole bunch of, I've still got the paper. It says, "You might be in Kenya if the Relief Society president and our first counselor are married to the same man. You might be in Kenya if, the guard at your compound asks you for money for transport every time his mother dies." And so, because he come to me and want money, and then said, "I need to go up country. My mother died." And I said, "Well, I said, I gave you money last time she died." And he was like, "Oh." But it was, and so I started writing all this stuff down, and I had it with me, and a couple of the couples, loved it and laughed about it. And when we got home, one of them wanted a copy, so I gave him a copy of it. And when we got home, we were giving our report in one of the sacrament meetings, and I could see this man from the back of the room coming up towards us. And I was like, oh, you can tell when somebody's making their way to you. And it was Elder Segmiller, and he works in the church office in the missionary department. And he said to me, he said, "More things came across my desk with your two name on them." I mean, we got sued. They sued us because we shut the branch down in one area and cut off their ability to get to the money. And so then they sued us and the prophet and the Quorum of the 12 and the board of trustees, and so all that stuff went across his office.
We had to send mail down. We had to send the documents down. They had they're called Secure Corps was a company, and there's a little motorcycle guy that would take the mail down to Nairobi every week, and we would go in and send all of our mail down with him. We just put a church stamp on it, and the church would pay for it, so we sent all the documents into Nairobi, and they went to Salt Lake, and so he'd see all the here comes the lawsuit. They want to excommunicate me and President Barger, and they were gonna sue the president of the church in the first presidency. And just always something like that, and that would go across the desk. So, and then we changed the boundaries of the branches and closed one of them down, and so that all went across his desk.
Anyway, so when he started walking up towards me, because I just wanted to meet you too, and then he said, and then there was this paper called "You Might Be in Kenya If," and I said, "Oh no!" I said that was just my frustration level. When I write it down, I could go back and see the humor in it instead of being frustrated. But it made it all the way to Salt Lake. I was a little embarrassed.
And one of the things was you might be in Kenya if the women are passing the sacrament.
Mm-hmm. That's probably where Lisa got that one.
But their tradition, the women served the men, and the women had a separate little house with a kitchen in it, where they'd cook the food, they'd bring it over, and the men would sit down and then serve the men. And so it was traditional for the women to serve the men. Like passing the sacrament was
a sign of service.
Mm-hmm. And they seem to think their tradition is more serious than the doctrine of the church.
More serious than who holds the priesthood. They thought it was a woman's right to do that.
He excommunicated the kid, and he told me, he says, well, my tradition is more important than your doctrine. He says, you shouldn't excommunicate me for marrying a girl without a dowry or whatever it was. She wasn't really legally married to him. He just took her for a wife. But he served a mission in South Africa.
That was hard too, because they had tribal marriages that weren't recognized by the state or by the church, but yet they were married in their tribe, So that was, part of that thing was getting those people actually.
Paying dowry was the only legal requirement to get married. You had to pay dowry and have it signed by the parents of the girl, or by the father.
Mm-hmm.
Our branch president was married to a girl, and he didn't have any dowry. He didn't have any. Her father was dead when he married her, just the mother. So I guess the church accepted the signature from the mother.
It's kind of hard to explain all that. When we were there, I learned enough what I call survival Swahili, so that I could tell what was going on. And I realized that they couldn't figure out why the perpetual education fund wouldn't work in Kenya, and I finally said to the mission president, I said, there's no word in Swahili for lend. It has to do with possession. So if you have it, it's yours. It doesn't matter how you got it. If you just pick it up, if you see it laying around, it becomes yours. And so and so when they were trying to teach him, about the perpetual education fund, and they were saying, yeah, you get your education, then you go to work and you pay back so that someone else can get an education. There was no concept of paying anything back, so it did not work in Kenya. And the banks don't loan, because if they if they have money, if they get money that's theirs, and thank you very much. That was part of the problem with the tithing. When they pay their tithing to that branch president, and then it was like, I remember we paid our tithing to the branch president, and he said, thank you. And I'm like, no, that's not for you. It goes. And so we really had to teach him that that tithing money was not their pay for being the branch president.
They wouldn't accept payment in kind for tithing in Africa.
Did you say they would not?
Yeah, they wouldn't accept payment in kind. They had to pay in cash.
What about here? Do they accept payment in kind here?
Yeah. If I donated my building in lava to the church, I could take it off my tithing the rest of my life. And I was going to, and by the time they accepted it, then I had a buyer come and buy it.
I'm going to let you hold this. My phone's going dead. I'm going to let Kim hold it while I go get my charger, okay?
All right, Kim, tell us some more stories then.
What stories you want to hear?
Whatever happened to you on your mission.
Oh, there's much stuff that happened, and I don't, I like Marcie to tell it because she can remember it more clearly. She remembers the details better. At the end of our mission, just before we came home, I called the president and said, hey, I have another guy that's, I think, is living polygamy. Should I go and interview him and give him a excommunication paper? He says, no, Elder Andrews says, you've done enough. He says, just don't worry about it. It's your time to go home. You just don't worry about it. We'll take care of it. So I didn't do any more. Just went home. But one of the branch presidents was excommunicated. He was rebaptized in about a year from the time we left. He was mad because he thought we were his friend, and now we were his enemy. But he got back into church within a year. So. You could get excommunicated for polygamy, and it was worse than if it was just stealing money. Stealing money wasn't so bad, but polygamy was apostasy. But stealing money from the church is just dishonest. We had one guy, the branch president says, I have a referral. This guy, I think he's interested in the church. He says he thinks that he'll listen, but he says he's really an influential guy, and he's really smart. He's really a really good guy. And so we went and started teaching him. And so we come to find out after about the second or third lesson, he was real interested. He wanted to join the church. And then we found out he was living polygamy, and he says, well, we can't, I says, we can't come back and teach you anymore if you live polygamy, because you can't be baptized into polygamy. He says, which wife do I divorce? He says, which wife should I get rid of? And I said, well, we can't say that. That's up to you. But he says, well, I guess I'll get rid of the young one because she has less children. So his new wife that got in trouble, I think he had to pay dowry back to the parents for them to take her back. And then that's all there was to it. If he paid some dowry, they would take her back, and then they would get dowry from a different person that would marry her. But he was going to get divorced, so we just didn't teach him anymore. And so I just didn't go. I don't think he got rid of a wife, and he didn't get baptized. But he had the Book of Mormon, and he liked that. And so I didn't hear about him anymore. The branch president there probably knows. He knows the people really well. That was in Tatali. But he did have quite a bit of ground, and so he had quite a bit of money, because if you have ground, then you can sell food, and it's a good income. It's a good living. And we found out from one of the other missionaries, a missionary from California, that the branch president up at one of their up in the mountains, they had this branch way up on the mountain that was kind of remote, and the branch president was in trouble because they found out that he had killed his wife before, one of his wives. And I says, well, what are they going to do about that? He says, oh, nothing. I don't know if it was from before or something, but they made him the branch president anyway. I thought, well, that's not very good. But of course, I had nothing to worry about without arguing with anybody. And the mission president is really nice to me. He says, I don't know what to do with these people, Elder Andrus. He says, I'll go along with about whatever you decide to do, he said. So that made me feel a little better. I said, well, thanks for loaning me your priesthood authority. He says, no, it's not loaning it to you. It's your priesthood. This is on you, not me. Whatever you do, it's on you. You got the priesthood. So that was kind of scary.
Scary.
But it was interesting.
Well, it's sure been interesting to hear you. Do you have any more to tell us?
You know, it's interesting that it's been so long that I'm sure I was so happy. I can't remember which one of my girls. I don't know if it was, I think it was Cammie. I think it was Cammie that printed out all of our emails. Because every week we'd email home and all the crazy things that happened that week, and she printed them out for me. I think it was her. It was either her or Tiff. Anyway, they printed them out for me, and so I go back, and it's better than any journal that I could have made, because it's not censored, you know. It was just a flat out how things were going. So and so I've got all that. I probably should have gone back and read through that stuff before we did this today, but
Well, it's certainly been interesting.
So one more question. Well, a two-part question. What do you miss least about being there, and what do you miss most?
It was really hard for me because every place we went, we were white, and they assumed we had money, and they were always begging for money, and that was hard for me, because I felt like, you know, they all need things, but if you start helping one and you don't help the other, then it causes all kinds of
Jealousy,
discord and jealousy. And so we were really Kim was pretty smart. He got a bag of potatoes and put them in the back of our car, and so if people would come up and start begging for money, he would hand them a potato, and if they were really in need, they would take it, and then we usually give them a couple more. If they weren't and they just wanted the money, they would either not take it, or they'd throw it on the ground, or, you know, something like that. So that was probably the hardest thing for me, was that they constantly were begging, that there was no personal space. They would get right up in your face, and I struggled with that. So that's probably the two things that I missed the least. Probably missing the most would be just, you know, just that open, you know, open, honest, just so willing to hear the truth, and so willing to embrace it. And there was no, you know, they didn't they didn't worry. They didn't worry about any kind of backlash or repercussions. One day we were teaching this lady, and we had her brothers were preachers in another church, and so we had taught her and baptized her and her husband, and they were. We had right after that, we had an appointment that canceled on us, and so we were out, just. And I said, "What do you want to do?" And Kim said, "Oh, I got to back up. We had a Swahili Book of Mormons, and they had told us a whole case of them, and they had told us not to use them because they didn't translate right, because there were a lot of words that there was no meaning for in Swahili, and so they had actually told us not to. They said members can use them for personal study, but don't try to teach out of them." And so we were.
And they would throw a book away.
And so we were leaving the house, and if any of you know Kim very well, you know that once he gets in the car, he's gone. He doesn't back up. He doesn't, and he pulled out from our house and then turned around and went back to the house. And I said, "What are you doing?" And he said, "I need to get something." And he went into the house and came out with this Swahili Book of Mormon. And I said, "What are you doing with that?" And he said, "Well, I just felt like we should take it." And he put it under the seat of the car, and we went on. And when this appointment canceled, we went to see this lady. And we went to see if we could find her, which was, that's exactly what it was. I mean, they didn't have, it was hard to call them or anything else. And so we actually found her sitting on the edge of the road crying. And she asked us, she said that her parents had done the whole tearing their clothes and rubbing ash on their face and all this stuff because she joined this bad church, and they were so upset. Anyway, so she said, "Would you go with me to talk to my mother?" And we told her we would. And so
we met her. She's walking down the street.
Yeah. She just by herself on the street. So we picked her up, took her to her mom's house. And when we got there, they're just so grateful or gracious. They're gracious to you. They come in, they want to feed you, they want to take care of you, they want to talk to you. And this lady met us at the door with just this set jaw. And I was like, ooh, not good. And so in a minute, Kim went out to the car and he brought in this Swahili Book of Mormon. And I was kind of upset at him because we weren't supposed to use them. And they said, the lady, she started jabbering in Swahili to her daughter that was with us, and the daughter was crying and the mom was crying, and we were just, I'm like, okay. I said to Invalid, I said, what just happened? Because I couldn't catch it all. And she said, my mother had a dream last night. She said she was praying and she had a dream last night. And she said that she would know that her daughter had joined a good church if three things happened the next day. First of them was that she would have visitors come to her home that following morning, that those visitors would bring her a gift, and that gift would be something that she could use, but the visitors could not. And I do not know, if you had given me that assignment in the morning, I have no idea what we would have taken to her. But because we took her a Book of Mormon that was written in Swahili that we couldn't read, then it met all three of them.
And she could read it. Yeah. So it was a thing where it met all the criteria for her dream. And she was so excited that her daughter had gone ahead and gotten baptized. But that was the affirmation that she needed.
That's awesome.
So did I answer that question? Lisa?
Yeah, that was great. So did the mother ever read the Book of Mormon and then join the church?
The mother did not, because the church said that you had to be able to pass the interview in English, and she could not speak any English whatsoever. But we did teach a couple of Invaleta's brothers, the ones that were the preachers from the other churches. we were able to teach them some lessons. And then the last time I heard, they were preaching Mormon doctrine in their churches, but I don't know that they ever joined.
Well, those are awesome stories. Been very interesting.
Want to hear about the time I met God?
They had a big group of people up by Sudan because there's they had wartime up in Sudan.
Had refugees.
Had a lot of refugees, and they come across the border into Kenya, just out of Sudan, and where they could be away from the government. And they started they had a big settlement up there. There was a town. It's like a refugee town. In the refugee town, they started a Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. They had the Book of Mormon, and they had a sign, and they painted it up like the church sign looks, and put it on a tree. And it was outside, but they had a big field there, and that's where they met for church, and they're promoting the church, and they wanted us to go up there and baptize and stuff. Well, of course, we didn't have permission. We weren't in an area of strength, and Sudan definitely was not in an area of strength, and so we couldn't do that. But after our mission, the mission president said that they were making plans to send a couple there to build the church. And I don't know whatever happened, but it was just temporary. All the refugees were just there for refuge, and then they went back to their homes, I guess. I don't know. That was after our time.
See, Sudan is very Muslim, and so it was, it's kind of scary to get into those kind of things. I got to tell you about that sign, though. There was one more thing. It was written just like the church signs. It said Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and then it had the meeting times written on it, and then underneath it said visitors welcome.
I wanted to ask you, Marcie, did you transfer, did they transfer you as often like they would here in the States, or, the different, they pretty much just left you?
Yeah, we were in the same place our entire mission. There was one point where there was some stuff going on, and they thought about transferring us over to Uganda, which was part of the mission at that point, and then it got transferred off. So we would have finished our mission in
Ralph Duke was the mission president there, and he got in a wreck and they killed him, and they sent his wife home. Well, him too. He was dead.
Yeah, they hydroplaned and ran into a big truck.
They thought about sending us over there to take their place as the mission president.
Well, I don't know that was it. But they were talking about sending us to Uganda. And then when the mission president asked me, he said, "How do you feel about that?" And I said, "I just feel like we aren't finished here." And he said, "Okay, you'll stay." But no, we were never transferred. We lived in the same home the whole time we were there.
Wow. That's interesting.
How long were you there?
Yeah.
In this complex we live in, we have like 3 buildings, and we have 24 missionaries here now.
Really?
Yeah, 2 couple missionaries, and then the rest are the elders and the sisters. Yeah, we've never had that many here. So they're all, and they hang their bikes over the balconies, and we could never do that. But, they can do anything.
Yeah.
But that's been, we've got 24 of them. That's been
a lot. That's a lot.
Yeah, it is.
Is it because they're not sending them out for foreign yet? Is that what's going on?
Well, not really, because they sent everybody home, and they started sending them out. They've just got them all over the place here. I'm not quite sure why we have so many. We've always had some, not that many, not that many.
Yeah.
And but it's been kind of fun. Roy's been doing whistles for all of them.
Oh, of course he has.
He's obsessed with whistles. And,
Willow, huh?
and he was going to go over to the sister missionaries' apartments, and no, I said, I don't know that you should go knock on their door without me going with you. I'm not, because he's everybody here knows he's, kind of got dementia. I mean, they bring him home to me, and he loses me, and but everybody takes care of him. Now he went walking the dogs. He still walks 3 dogs a day. But I can tell him where I'm going, and I just go downstairs, and he can't remember. So he just, whoever he sees, he says, "Can you find my wife?"
Oh. Well, it's nice that you're in a place where they keep track of him, though.
Yeah, we love it here. Love it here. They take really good. Well, he takes good care of them.
Yes, I'm sure he does.
Just put up with me, but
I don't believe that.
But anyway,
Well,
but it's interesting that we got that many here. It's kind of fun.
Yeah.
Well, a week ago, we got a new bishopric.
And because of some stuff that had gone on with the money and
Excommunications were doing.
yeah, and the excommunication, elders, Kim went down and had them make him a wood bat out of wood, and he had in the back, that you put the rifles in the truck. You guys are probably waiting to remember all that, but anyway, so it was sitting up in the window of the truck, and to this guy's house, the one that was part of this whole thing, and he was a branch president, and he said, "So what is that?" And Kim said, "It's a baseball bat." And he said, "Well, what is it for?" And he said, "It's a game that we play in the United States. It's baseball." And he said, "Well, what do you do?" And he said, "Let me show you." And he got that hardwood bat out of the back of that window, and I swear he hit a rock that went miles. I mean, that thing just soared. And he said, "Oh," like that. And I was like, okay, we're not going to have any more trouble from him, And then when we left the mission, we gave that baseball bat to our mission president. It was for him to keep because he knew the story. So
Well, sure been interesting, guys. If there's more, we'll listen. If there's not, we ought to find out who's going to present next week.
okay. Well, I can't think of anything right off. I'm sure if I kept talking, more would come, but
You want us to schedule you next week to continue?
no, if I did that, I just have to get out I'd have to get out all the papers and read through them, and then I could do it.
That would be great.
Would it?
Yeah, I'm sure if you read
I find